Hello there everyone. In today's video we have the Apex Legends Aftermarket update. Basically the season 6.1 quote-unquote. This video overview sponsored by EA. Thank you to them for making this video possible. We are going to be going through, very briefly, the news and updates that are happening along with this event, be it the skins, be it the heirloom, be it balance changes. We're going to go into all of that and more in this discussion. Now, there will not be any gameplay with this, unfortunately, just because I do not have the quickest of internet, so I was not able to get the game downloaded and actually, get some footage to throw in here. So we're just going to read through the patch notes while I'm downloading in the background, and we're going to do a stream pretty much right as this video goes live, and we're going to actually play this stuff live. So make sure you check that out on twitch.tv/frothyomen or use the link in the description box down below. Now, most important thing in this update is that we have a cross-play beta. So how this is going to work is that essentially if you are a console player, you are going to be able to go into a party with your friends on PC, and you can basically move into PC servers with your PC friends and play in PC lobbies. However, if you are a PC player, you cannot go sideways to a console and play on console servers. If you're a PC player, you can only play PC servers, but if you're a console player, you can match up with a PC player, and then you guys can go together into a PC lobby together. Now, you do need to have crossplay enabled, whether you're a PC player or a console player. That is a thing you need to have enabled. And as an extra note for Xbox players, I have heard rumblings that in the settings, maybe like the family account settings or privacy settings, something in there, there is a separate crossplay enabled or disabled toggle in those settings that may or may not be actually affected by your in-game setting. It may supersede the in-game setting. So if you are the manager of your Xbox, then make sure that crossplay is toggled on. If your parents or some other individual manages your Xbox, ask if they can turn that on for you, if that is something that you want to participate in. Next up, we have a new LTM called Flashpoint. So in this brand new game mode, it'll be on Kings Canyon. The major changes here are that the ring behaves as if you're playing Always Be Closing, so the ring will always be closing, and it is going to always finish on one of the flashpoints, which you can see in the screenshot here are these big blue-green domes. So the idea with these domes is that while you're inside of them and you are not actively taking damage, you will regenerate both health and shields while you're inside them. The caveat, though, is that you are not able to find any healing items whatsoever in the world. So there are no medkits, there are no shield batteries, no phoenixes, whatever. All of that stuff is completely removed from the loot pool, and you must go to one of these flashpoint zones to heal as a generic option available to everyone. So that is the main idea with this one. There's going to be some strategies there of whether or not you're going to try to drop into one of these domes to begin with and try to see, is the Always Be Closing circle going to finish on your dome, or do you need to rotate to another dome? Or are you going to try to go far away and hit many of these POIs, especially ones that are outside the domes, to see if you can get some safer loot before moving your way in and getting into the big, huge fights that are going to be breaking out and all the gatekeeping that's going to be breaking out around each of these bubbles. So, going to be an interesting mode. Make sure you give that a look. Next up, we have the Aftermarket Collection event. This will be much better covered by the official videos that have been put out by Respawn. But as you can see here, two of some of the most, I think, well-liked skins by the community, especially the one on the left, this Wraith with the little cat ears and the hood. That seems to be quite a popular one on the internet so far, and everyone loves Watson, so great skins for them as well. I am personally particularly interested in the Gibraltar Legendary, which kind of looks like he has turned into a motorcycle in and of himself, which is really, really cool. In addition, there is also these free cosmetics that will come with the just progressing through this event, much like every other collection event out there. There is this Hemlock skin, which basically looks like that really cool Bloodhound Vinna skin that everyone seems to love so much, I myself included. So this Hemlock is built to match, and then we have a Bangalore skin as well. Moving on to this other bit of content here, we have a new heirloom in the form of Caustic's Death Hammer. So we will see this in-game very, very soon. Again, I'm sorry that I can't actually show this to you in-game right now, but slow internet takes a while to actually get this stuff downloaded, so we will take a look at that on stream and hopefully in future videos. Now, into the real meat and potatoes of this news discussion. We have balance changes, we have patch notes, and if you have watched my channel for the past, many years, every time we got a major balance update to a Respawn game, we generally cover it. So, let's get into it. First up, Rampart. We have a buff for Rampart, so the rate at which Sheila's bullet spread tightens has been increased. So, generally speaking, you would need to shoot a very significant amount of bullets from Rampart's minigun ultimate consecutively without stopping before it would actually start to cone down and become even a little bit accurate. So this will happen much more quickly and hopefully make Rampart a little bit easier to use and a little bit more forgiving when you actually decide to use the turret and get on the turret and make it less of a death trap, you know? So a little bit more of an offensive presence from it should be mostly welcome because she has mostly been underperforming from what I've seen. Next up, we have a small nerf to Bloodhound, which I'm sure is going to make many players sad, but personally, I'm quite happy with this change. So the main idea here is that with the last major buff to Bloodhound, when they were in their ultimate, they could use their tactical ability, the wall hack ability, on a 6-second cooldown, which was pretty insane because you would be revealed for 4 seconds, and then you would be hidden for 2 seconds, and then revealed for 4, and then hidden for 2, and it was just quite oppressive because even those 2 seconds where you weren't revealed, it wasn't really enough time for you to actually do something that was super meaningful because you were basically just always revealed through walls to the entire enemy team. And if that Bloodhound knocks you down and thirsts you, then they get a bunch of extra time on that ultimate and they can just keep on sniffing out your team. And it felt, in some cases, a little oppressive, or maybe to use a little bit less of an emotionally charged word, just it felt a little strong. It felt like it was a little bit too much. It was not super fun to play against, although it felt great to use. It felt very powerful to use. So with this balance change, they're taking 2 seconds and adding it to that cooldown. So now it's going to be 8 seconds for the tactical ability cooldown, specifically while you're in the ult. If you're not in the ult, then nothing has changed. This is only the tactical while you are in the ult. It's just a little bit less buff than it was before, but it is still very strong. I do not expect this to significantly affect the pick rates of Bloodhound, but it should improve player enjoyment for those players that are fighting against Bloodhounds. So this should be an interesting change. We'll see how this turns out. Make sure you leave your feedback in all of the typical places for Respawn to see about this change. Next up, we have a major Pathfinder change, which I am a very big fan of. I think this is really good for the game. So, your grapple cooldown is now based on the distance you travel when you grapple. So, if you do a very short distance grapple, either because you messed up or because you intentionally did a very small grapple, the shortest possible cooldown now is 10 seconds. However, if you make a super long distance grapple, like the max possible or beyond, then you're gonna get the normal cooldown that we currently have of 35 seconds. So basically, on average, most players are gonna have their grapple cooling down quicker than it was before, but at maximum, if you set up a really big grapple swing, then it's still gonna be that 35-second duration for the cooldown, which makes a whole lot of sense to me, because if you're using it to traverse the map, then they don't want you getting too far away from your team or being able to cover too much ground too quickly, too consistently. You know, it's supposed to be a very bursty thing. So this is an interesting little mechanic that they have put in that I think is going to add some great wrinkles to Pathfinder plays. I think it's going to promote high-skill players in using short-term, or rather short-distance grapples more often to get that reward of having a faster cooldown. So just little grapples here, little grapples there, and then when it's really time, they can let the big one rip, and you know, they'll have a cooldown to match. And that seems to make a whole lot of sense to me. I'm a big fan of this one. Next up, we have a Wraith sprint animation change. So I will let you guys take a look at the patch notes yourself if you want to read through everything that the developers have stated about this change in their notes, because it's quite the read. But here is basically what is happening, is Wraith's sprint animation used to be like the Naruto run. She would hunch down and have her arms behind her back, and she would make herself a lot shorter, right? And it was just very awkward to shoot at. It was a really weird shape, and Wraith, with one of the smallest hitboxes in the games and some of the best animations in the game already, also having this was just artificially making her stronger than she really needed to be. So With this change, specifically while she's sprinting, she will now stand up more straight and have a more traditional sprinting animation. And while this does remove a lot of the character from the character, for the sake of game balance, it's a whole lot better, I think, and I understand why Respawn did it, and I'm totally able to look the other way on this one and just say, hey, you know, this is a competitive game after all, with literal, like, six-figure plus esports involved. I think it's really important that in some cases like this, we might need to drop just a little bit of the character from the game in order to promote a better bit of balance. So I'm okay with this. We'll see how it goes. It's sad, but I think very, very reasonable. Next up, we have Crypto. So now it's just a very, very niche and small buff, but Crypto's drone is able to open the loot vaults on World's Edge if you have the vault key in your inventory, and it will consume the key as usual. Not really a huge deal, but it's something, so I am fine with that. Giving Crypto just little bits of tweaking and just more niche usefulness across the board, I think is pretty nice overall. It makes Crypto just that little bit better to play, because sometimes he can just be not the most fun thing, so this will definitely help. Next up, we have some changes to Loba. So they have increased the range of her ultimate and passive from 3,100 units to 4,500 units. And if you don't know what that means, don't worry, I kind of don't either. I am assuming by this they mean hammer units, which is something like a measurement in inches in the game engine. So the conversion to meters, I am not about to do that math live for you. But if you want to look up what a hammer unit is and how a hammer unit translates to inches, which you can then easily convert to meters, be my guest, you can absolutely do that math. I'm sure someone in the comments will do it, and if you do it, maybe I'll pin that in the comments down below. But this is effectively about a 30 to 33% increase in radius for both of her ultimates and her passive. And now keep in mind that her ultimate and her passive have the exact same range. So if there is loot you can see with Loba's passive, if you drop her ultimate right down at your feet, you will be able to reach that with the ultimate. So this is going to be very, very good for Loba. It's just going to give her more consistency on the ultimate. It's going to force her to be a little bit less particular and picky about where she places it. She can put it in more safe locations now, and hopefully get a little bit more value out of it for her team. In addition, her ultimate will start at half charge when you first drop in the map. I don't believe this affects when you get respawned from a dropship, but for the initial spawn in at the start of the game, you will land and have 50% on your ultimate. Basically, the idea here is that it's only a 90-second cooldown for her ultimate anyways, and they didn't want to make that any faster for general play. But what they found, the developers, by they is what I'm meaning, they found that many players would fully loot the first POI they land in, or fight an enemy team and, you know, be in the process of almost being done looting by the time that ult would be charged. And then it just sits there on waiting, it sits there on cooldown, waiting to be used for a good couple of minutes while the team rotates into their next POI or to their next fight. And then they start using it there. So they figured, why not start it with a half charge, so that way you're pretty much always going to use it in that first place you land to help normalize your team's loot and give you a better chance at winning your first fight and actually making it out of that first POI. So makes a lot of sense to me. I think this is a huge brain decision that I probably would never have thought of myself, and I think this is going to make Loba a whole lot better for pubs, just for the average level player. I don't think that she's going to become significantly better in ranked necessarily, but I think for pubs, you're going to definitely feel better about picking her, so hopefully this works out well. Next up, we have a few weapon meta changes. The first one I disagree with, and then there's one that I kind of disagree with, and we'll get into that. So, the Devotion. Your hip fire spread at all stages of whether you're firing or not firing, whether you're 1 bullet into the mag, 50 bullets into the mag, doesn't matter. No matter where you are, that hip fire spread has been increased. Your bloom of your crosshair has been increased. So the Devotion should be quite a bit less accurate while you're hip firing it, because that has been one of the more degenerate ways of using Spitfire, is just barrel stuffing people going full auto, which if you are really, really, really close, it'll still be pretty good at that, but they're just reducing that effective range where you can rely on the hip fire, and they're forcing you to ADS at a little bit closer of a range than you might like. which hopefully should actually give an opposing player that you're devotioning a little bit more of a fighting chance to, get onto your head and start hitting a bunch of headshots on you while you're basically standing still with a devotion, because your 80 strafing speed while aiming down sights with LMGs is very, very poor. So hopefully that will work in the defending player's favor just a little bit better. Now, for the part that I very much disagree with, Respawn has also nerfed the hipfire spread of the Spitfire to match the devotion. The Spitfire was already one of the weakest weapons in the game when you consider a PC and keyboard and mouse only centric metagame. Now on consoles, the Spitfire has been plenty strong in pubs for a lot of people, but when you look specifically, at least at my experiences on PC in a keyboard and mouse centric metagame, the Spitfire has been pretty much nothing short of bottom tier. You would pretty much take any other heavy weapon over the Spitfire when the game allows. If you can get a flatline, drop the Spitty for it. If you can get a wingman, drop the Spitty for it in many situations. Not always, but often. If you get a Prowler, pretty much always drop it for a Spitfire. Like, there's just not a lot of reasons to keep this weapon. It's more of an attachment holder for other things. It's really good off drop, but as you get to late game, it just really falls off. So by nerfing the hipfire spread, you nerf one of the most powerful things about the Spitfire in the early game, which is that you can pick it up and you've got a lot of bullets in mag. Even if you can't find any ammo around it, you got a lot of bullets and good hipfire, so you can actually take a fight against somebody and reasonably have a chance of winning. Whereas now, with even worse hipfire performance on the Spitfire, you have to ADS it with one of the worst iron sights in the game. Probably the worst, at least in my opinion. And also some of the worst 80 strafing hipfire, and, I'm sorry, 80 strafing speeds while aiming down sights. It's one of the worst at that. And what you're getting to compensate is reduced horizontal recoil while aimed down sights, which is good, don't get me wrong. That compensating buff, compensatory maybe? I'm just really having trouble speaking, I'm sorry. This compensatory buff is nice, don't get me wrong, it's a good one. But I really just don't think that it's the direction the Spitfire needed to go necessarily. I mean, like, I don't know. The Spitfire, I think, is going to be even weaker than it ever has been. I don't think it needed this nerf. I dislike the reasoning given that Respawn is trying to keep hipfire numbers consistent with weapons of the same class, because the L-Star is also an LMG, and it's not receiving a hipfire spread nerf. So how are they trying to keep the hipfire numbers consistent with similar weapons of the same class when another similar weapon of the same class, the L-Star, is not being changed? You know, like, if you're going to do that, then nerf the L-Star too. If your reasoning is going to be that, why not nerf the L-Star? If you're going to make the L-Star an exception to this nerf, just make the Spitfire the exception as well, and just have the Devotion be the only one getting the nerf, because it's the only weapon that needs the nerf. The Spitfire change just doesn't make any sense to me. I don't think it needed to happen, and I hope that something more positive will happen to the Spitfire in future seasons, because this is, frankly, in my opinion, not good. Next up, the triple take, we have a reduction in the fire rate from 1.4 bullets per second to 1.3 bullets per second. Not really a huge deal in my opinion. That's fine. It doesn't really nerf the sniping capability of it all that much, but it will change your ability to use it as a shotgun in close range just a little bit, but it's still going to be better than it was last season at 1.2, so I mean, hard to argue with this one. It's fine. Next up, we have some really nice quality of life changes for the way that armor, specifically Evo shields, are being presented to you in the UI. If you look right here by my mouse, you'll see that in one of the right corners of any armor that you're looking at when comparing it to another armor, you can see how many more points of damage your armor that you are wearing needs to be upgraded to the next level versus the piece of armor on the ground or in a loot box or whatever that you were looking at. So you can very easily compare them. So if you see a green arrow, that means that that piece of armor is closer to leveling up. But you can also compare the current amount of shields in that piece of armor. So you can see this one on the bottom is closer to leveling by only needing 40 more damage, but it's got a little more than 25 damage on it. Whereas the one on top, you need a couple more bullets of hits on someone to level it up, but it's at full charge at 75 armor. So now you have a little better idea of what is going to happen when you're trying to switch Evo armors. And once you get used to this UI, you can go through it much more quickly and decide in a pinch which armor you want in a given situation, and not have to pick one armor up and then drop it in the ground and then pick the other armor up and have to memorize numbers from the first one and compare to the second one and go back and forth because the game only lets you switch one way and not the other way. Like, all of that stuff, all that weirdness of going from Evo armor to Evo armor seemingly has been rectified. So hopefully this is going to be a very positive change for the game and will make looting much faster. Next up, there has been another UI change. So if you're looking at an item that you are able to ping, if you see this icon of just a silhouette waving, that means that this is an item that you specifically do not need. However, your teammate will benefit from this item. The example given in the recent developer stream was that, let's say that you have a blue backpack equipped, and you find another blue backpack on the ground. If you look at that backpack in this update, you'll see this icon now if one of your teammates is wearing a white backpack or no backpack, because this is currently a straight upgrade for them. It is currently better for them. So you can just ping it, and it'll kind of reinforce the idea that you should be pinging items for your teammates. And this will let you know that, hey, your teammate actively needs this, so make sure they get it. My assumption would be that this will probably also apply to things like a skull piercer or a turbocharger, things of that nature. Like anything where picking it up is going to just be a straight upgrade for you no matter what. You're probably going to see an icon like that now, so that is very, very nice. Next up, we have a performance display that has been added to the game. So you're able to see your frame rate, your latency, packet loss, any kind of network issues that may be having, as well as what is called in and out. So it's what they're calling like a data rate in and out from the server. I'm not sure if this is kind of like a tick rate or if this is something else. I do not understand enough about networking to actually say what that is. So, just be aware and, be aware of that, and you can toggle that on if you would like. A couple more quick little things before we go. Anonymous mode has been added to the options. So basically what this means is that when you use streamer mode, you can hide all other players' names that are incoming to your screen. So you would only see like, oh, you killed Bangalore1234 or Pathfinder2345, But your name outgoing would not be hidden. So if you are a big time streamer or just someone who values their anonymity online, if you were to kill someone, then you are still very targetable because other people can see your name. So now with anonymous mode, it will basically do streamer mode in reverse, where you can make it so when you kill another player, your name is anonymized. So basically, if you turn this on and Frothy Omen goes into a lobby and is the champion, no one is going to know that the champion is Frothy. They're just going to see the champion is Pathfinder 2345, and that's all they're going to see. So this is a great option, again, for streamers or people who would just really rather stay anonymous. So really big change for some streamers out there, and I hope that this serves them well. Next up, your level 0 Evo armor is now going to appear as an empty slot in your inventory. So that way you can actually ping the empty slot when you open your inventory menu to tell your teammates that you want a better armor. As it was before this patch, if you were to ping there, it doesn't do anything because you would have a white Evo armor equipped and it just was not a pingable slot because the slot was filled with something. So they've toggled that around a little bit, so now you can actually ping it and tell your teammates you want armor, which kind of bizarre to me because of course you always want armor and your teammates should always be pinging armors no matter what, but it's just a nice little reminder. Oh, hey, look at that. One of my downloads is finished in the background. Look at that. Oh, it's another game that I'm downloading. Don't even worry about that. Okay, so that is nice and quiet now. Any other major changes going on here? Let's see, out of bounds. Ah, yes, the out of bounds timer change. I almost forgot about this. So, typically in Apex, you have an out of bounds timer that lasts for up to 30 seconds. And if you go back inbounds, that timer will slowly fill back up to 30 seconds if you don't go out of bounds again. Now, that is basically at a hard cap. So you are hard capped at 30 seconds of out of bounds time in an entire match. With one exception, is that If you are at 5 seconds or lower, and then you get back inbounds, your timer will slowly go back up to a max of 5 seconds. So that way, you know, let's say that you let your countdown timer go from 30 seconds down to 0.5 seconds. And then you were to accidentally step out of bounds, or the ring were to be closing, and something were to happen, or not, well, I guess the ring doesn't count, but, I mean, you get what I'm getting at, right? Like, if you were to just accidentally step out of bounds, or you take a balloon and you come too close to a cliff that is technically out of bounds, and you would be there for just a split second, it would be enough to just instantly kill you. That is, not really going to be a thing. Respawn has thought about that and put protections in against that, so that way you'll at least have 5 seconds. So in those weird situations, you can see, oh crap, I'm out of bounds, and come back in very quickly. So I think this will be really good for the game in general. It's going to prevent a lot of these weird out of bounds abuses that I know I've abused many times, and many other players have as well. This should make that whole situation just a little bit better overall, especially in things like tournaments, because that is where people are going to find the craziest, most ridiculous out-of-bounds spots and cycles where they can go out of bounds for a while and then just barely inch back in for a little bit and then go back out of bounds for a while, then just barely inch back in and do weird stuff like that. That'll be way less prominent in this update, so that is very cool. Anyways, everyone, that mostly does it for all the major updates. I will leave a link to this set of patch notes in the description if you want to check it out yourself and read in more detail. Thank you all so much for coming by. I hope you learned something new from this. We will be streaming very shortly after this video goes live, and we will take a look at some of the brand new event cosmetics, and that'll be very cool. Plus, get some games, of course. So we'll see you all there. You have a great day, great night, whatever time it is for you, and take care.